Welcome to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. I'm Pete Mezzetti, sitting here with Eric Hammerling, who's the Executive Director of the Connecticut Forest and Park Association. Eric, welcome. How are you?
I am doing great, Pete. It's great to see you.
Well, good to see you, my friend. Good to see you, my friend. What's new?
Oh boy, where to start? So, as you know, at the Connecticut Forest and Park Association, there are things going on all year round.
Right.
This is the time of year in the fall that a lot of people are getting outdoors because of the foliage. But for me personally, this is my favorite time of year to go for a hike.
Absolutely.
You know, the reason for me is you don't have lots of bugs this time of year.
Absolutely.
You have obviously the beautiful foliage, but even after the leaves fall off the trees, then you get the incredible views that you weren't able to see when the leaves were on the trees.
No, absolutely not.
It is a wonderful time to get outdoors, and we're continuing to try to encourage people to do that.
Absolutely. Now, how long have you been with CFPA?
I've been the executive director since May of 2008.
Okay.
So 13 years.
Wow.
And just love the organization. I mean, I consider it a privilege to be the leader of the state's oldest nonprofit conservation organization, now 126 years old.
Oh, wow.
And I find it just amazing that CFPA came into existence in 1895, before there were state parks, before there were state forests, before there was a Yale School of Forestry.
That's right.
You know, many of the things that we take for granted these days, now that we have 110 state parks and 34 state forests and all these wildlife management areas, those didn't exist back in 1895. And that's one of the things that our organization set out to do, is to really make sure there are these beautiful open areas for the public to enjoy, get to learn about forests. And then in the 1920s, actually, the organization said, you know what, the best way that people can see the outdoors is on trails. So that's where the Blue Blaze hiking trail system kind of took off, and now it's almost 900 miles of trails all around Connecticut, maintained by volunteers. And so for me, it's a real honor to be a part of all that great work that's going on.
Now, tell us a little bit about the Blue Blaze hiking trails and where exactly they start, where they finish, and all that good stuff.
Well, the Blue Blaze hiking trails, you know, it's about 900 miles of trails that go through 96 different towns in the state, so they're all over the place. And there are lots of different ways that people can find out where the trails are. You know, we do, and since the 1930s, we've sold something called the Connecticut Walkbook that you may have a copy of at home. And it's a great resource for people who want to see maps of where to go. We also offer on our website, which is ctwoodlands.org, an interactive trails map. So people can go there and see where all of the different trailheads are for all of the Blue Blaze hiking trails. So we're doing everything we can to try to make sure that it's as easy as possible for people to find the trails, get to them. You can actually use that map on your phone, and you can get driving directions to a trailhead. It's a really wonderful resource, and it even has a feature that will keep you from getting lost, because you can, if you have your GPS on, you can have that map open and you can see yourself on it, a little red dot walking around, and that'll help to keep you on the trails. You know, of course, you follow the blazes on the trees, and that's why they're called the Blue Blazed hiking trails, by the way, because they have a blue blaze, a painted blaze on the trees that people can follow and not get lost.
Oh, nice.
But to get people to those places is what we're all about. And we have amazing volunteers and a few staff who, what they do is they help to keep those places open and well maintained and safe for the public to use.
Is that what Claire Kane would do from the CFPA?
Indeed.
There you go.
So you know Claire very well.
Absolutely.
She's our trails director and basically oversees all of the work that we do on trails. And another element that she also works on is, you know, one of the trails that we're responsible for is now called the New England Trail, which folks in Connecticut who aren't used to hearing about the New England Trail may just know about the Mattabesit or the Metacomet or the Monunketuk Trail that goes through Guilford. Those are all parts of a national scenic trail called the New England National Scenic Trail. It's one of only 11 national scenic trails in the United States. So we have running right through the center of Connecticut and the Connecticut River Valley, all the way from Guilford up to the New Hampshire border. a National Scenic Trail that we're responsible for, and it's a partnership with the National Park Service and the Appalachian Mountain Club, and it's another incredible resource to get people out to.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now let's talk a little bit about how the CFPA has been doing during the pandemic.
So we talked about 2020 and, of course, a good amount of 2021 as well as being our lemonade days. Right? We were taking the lemons that were handed to us and trying to make as much lemonade as we possibly could. And it was a challenge, especially for any sort of in-person events. And the biggest event that we're best known for, as you know, is Connecticut Trails Day.
That's right.
Which is always held the first weekend in June.
Right.
One of the things that we had to do in 2020 is to make Connecticut Trails Day a do-it-yourself event, essentially. Okay. We said, here are all these different places you can go, but we're not able to lead organized events as a group because there are still a lot of concerns about COVID.
Right.
So we identified places for people to go. In 2021, though, we turned the corner a bit, and this year we had over 150 events that took place all around the state during that first weekend in June.
Sure.
And we are excited about what this next year holds. Hopefully, it will be some semblance of a return to normal in 2022, and we just can't wait for that to happen.
Now let's talk about as far as the way that the parks handled the pandemic.
Yeah, well, one of the things that might be a surprise to some, but if you think about it, it does make sense.
Right.
The state parks got more visitors during the pandemic than they've ever received before.
Okay.
And it was pretty interesting to watch when people said, you know what, I am not able to go to, let's say, a movie or a show.
Right.
What do we do?
Right.
And people went to state parks. And,
Absolutely.
They found in 2020 the state parks had about a 20% increase in visitation, and that was about 12 million people who just in that year went out to state parks. And interestingly enough, that kind of high visibility and attendance at state parks has continued. This year, it is actually 13 million plus people attended state parks, and they're finding that not only is it a place that you can go and something to do, and they're fun and beautiful, and of course nice place like at the Hammonasset or Rocky Neck to go for a tan, a day at the beach, et cetera, et cetera. But also it's a healthy thing that people can do for recreation, physical kind of benefits, and also for public health benefits. Absolutely. Because when you feel like there's a lot of anxiety in the world, one of the best ways to break that down is go for a walk.
Absolutely.
Go to a beautiful place, rest your mind, get to a place of relaxation, and that just makes a huge difference in people's lives.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm sure during especially this time of what's going on, the people at especially the staff members at the parks are very far and few between as far as workers and people who are actually maintaining and the upkeep of the parks.
Indeed. So we have, unfortunately, a growing disconnect in Connecticut between the people who are getting out to the parks in great numbers, but the resources that the state is able to put towards taking care of our parks has been flat or even diminishing in some instances. And one of the things that we're very concerned about is in this next year having enough frontline. Now we're talking not just the seasonal workers who between, let's say, April and October are tending to parks and keeping them open, but there's also a need for maintainers year round to take care of the parks and have make sure that they are safe and available for the public. We've found that right now there are only about 76 staff
Okay.
who within the Deep Parks Division who are responsible for 110 state parks.
Right.
It is not working well,
Okay.
especially because in this next year we expect a lot of state employees to retire.
Right.
They've done some analysis of people who work to maintain and keep state parks safe, and they found that 30 to 35%, and this is, a lot of people, especially when you have a really diminished number already of people caring for parks, a lot of people are going to retire.
Right.
Because in 2022, starting on July 1st, the retirement benefits for state employees change.
Right.
After July 1st, state employees who retire will not receive cost of living adjustments the way that they do right now.
Absolutely.
They won't receive full health care benefits the way they do right now. People will have to contribute. And there are other things that will be lost starting July 1st.
Okay.
Of course, the state did this not to create a crisis of retirements, but because of financial reasons, and can understand some of those.
Right.
But this next year, because we expect to lose so many park staff, we are really concerned because it takes, on average, let's say about 6 months to refill a position.
Okay.
And think about all of the people who tend to parks who are going to be leaving before July 1st. And keep in mind that the height of the park season is the July 4th weekend.
Absolutely.
You are going to be losing a lot of people and not have those positions refilled during the heart of the season next year when people are getting out to parks at huge numbers. And that's going to create a strain that we think is going to be, unfortunately, we think it's going to be at the level of unsafe.
Right.
And, we, of course, would never tell people don't go to parks.
Right.
But if people are going to parks to, create mischief or anything like that, there's going to be less of an opportunity for people to respond and take care of problems.
Absolutely.
So, and anyway, this next year is going to be a super challenge for one of our state's greatest resources.
Now, as far as when the parks quiet down after Labor Day weekend, from Labor Day into the winter, into the spring, until they reopen again, what type of maintenance do people do during the off season? Yeah,
well, there's a lot of things that can be done in the off season. First of all, we would argue that the state parks are supposed to be open year round for people who want to use them during the winter. There's a lot of activities that can be done during the winter time in state parks, right? Cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, even going for walks during the winter is really lovely. But if no one is there to take care of those places, you worry that damage is going to be created, and that's going to be a problem.
Right.
There's also a lot of planning that happens or tending to the things that aren't able to be tended to during the height of the season, like think about all of the buildings and structures that are associated with the state park, right? You have at Hammerling, think about all of the bathhouses, and, all of those facilities. When people are using them every day, it's really difficult to get projects done to upgrade those facilities, and that is what's typically done in the off season to take care of those places so that next year they'll be ready to go. If they don't have the people to do it, if things take too long to get addressed, again, that creates a huge stress on the ability of parks to be safe for the next year.
And as far as the everything goes, how do we think the outlook on the 2022 season of everything is going to look?
I really think it's going to be a challenge across the state park system to make sure that places are well cared for. They're expecting a lot of people to be coming out to the state parks. Fortunately, there is some support for the state parks through a program that CFPA and others advocated really strongly for, and that's the Passport to the Parks program.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So the Passport to the Parks is something that, we all contribute to in Connecticut. When we register our vehicles, we pay a $5 per year fee, which goes to taking care of parks.
Right.
And in return for that $5 a year fee, and you may have noticed this, you go to a state park now and they don't stop you at the gate and say, please pay $13,
right.
Or even more if you're talking a weekend on a shoreline park.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's no fee at the gate
Wow.
because we've already contributed to the state parks. So think about that, $5 a year for having free access to all of our state parks is pretty phenomenal. And that generates, that $5 a year generates about $20 million to help fund the state parks and keep them together. It doesn't take care of everything. There are additional costs, but it takes care of, let's say 75% of their costs. So they have some base support that is strong, and we think will be wonderful to help sustain the parks. However, you have to have people to take care of parks. So, they may have some funding to do things, but if they don't have the people, it will be difficult, especially in 2022.
Absolutely. Now, as far as you guys actually work pretty well with the DEEP and the DEEP Commissioner Katie Dykes.
Oh, indeed. I know she's a friend of your show.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I have very high regard for Commissioner Dykes. I think that she did some fantastic work. We're talking about 2020 and some of the challenges. She did some fantastic work during that year on the Governor's Council on Climate Change, to really make some, I think, terrific recommendations on things that we should think about as our state, both to try to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and respond when we have additional storms and some of the challenges that climate change brings us. So I think she's done some terrific work there. I think we and the commissioner know that it can't just stop with some recommendations that were made. There's some actual changes and work that needs to be done. So that's something that we're going to continue advocating for and working on. One thing, Pete, that I've spent some time on as part of that effort and to try to bring it forward is to try to address issues associated with our forests.
Right.
In Connecticut, we have some amazing forest resources, both in state forests, but also in there's about 71% of the forest land in Connecticut is privately owned. And if we want to try to make sure that our forests are healthy in the future, we have to be working very closely with private landowners to make sure that they have the tools they need and incentives they need to ensure that forests are well cared for. And there are some things that can be done in the law that I think will help to support private landowners and how they manage and sustain their forests. And that's something that we're working on right now.
Eric Hammerling from the Connecticut Forest and Park Association. Would you mind sticking around for another segment?
I'd be happy to.
We'll be right back.
People ask me, is it hard to figure out if I should get tested for coronavirus? Well, as a professor, I love giving a pop quiz. Are you experiencing fever, chills, cough, shortness of breath, fatigue, or body ache? Well, then coronavirus testing is available without a referral, and it's the best way to protect yourself and your family. It actually reminds me of Plato, who once said, "The price good men pay." Okay, I deserve that.
What rhymes with great?
Participate.
Where does greatness start?
Here, in the classroom.
On the stage.
In the pool.
On the field.
Where will your greatness take you?
To better grades.
To more friends.
Yeah! Be great.
Participate!
Welcome back to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. Sitting here with Eric Hammerling, who's the Executive Director of the Connecticut Forest and Park Association. Eric, welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Good to see you. So, Eric, we were talking a little bit about the in the first segment about exactly what the Connecticut and Forest Park Association does. But what people don't know is you guys are actually a nonprofit organization. So maybe we can start talking about that in the opening of the segment.
Oh, absolutely. I'd be happy to.
Okay.
Would you like me to just
Sure.
jump right in?
Yeah, go for it.
So yeah, CFPA, as you said, is a nonprofit conservation organization,
Yeah.
and I had mentioned earlier that we're the first nonprofit conservation organization in the state, and the oldest. And we work on a lot of different things that are opportunities for people to get involved with as volunteers, or we also have a number of people who are members to help support our organization. But when I talk about CFPA, there are basically 4 major activities that we do that I think people get to connect to. And we, as we talk about them, tend to use a nice acronym that's very much an outdoorsy acronym that we use is ACRE. So ACRE, the A in ACRE is advocacy.
Okay.
So we have a lot of issues every year in Connecticut that need to be addressed at the state legislature, and we are involved with advocacy on issues related to forests, parks, trails, outdoor recreation.
Right.
The C is for conservation. And we're actually a statewide land trust.
Right.
A lot of communities have a land trust, but we actually are a statewide land trust. We have about 2,000 acres of land that we either own or hold easements on and are responsible for monitoring and caring for into the future.
Sure.
So that's something that works great for us. The R is recreation, and of course I talked about the Blue Blazed hiking trails
Right.
and Connecticut Trails Day and all of the efforts to try to get people outdoors. And then the E in ACRE is education, and we do a lot of programs with middle school kids, teachers, getting families outdoors, and making sure there are resources for landowners who want to do some good things for wildlife, for forest, and so we're always providing information that we hope people will use for good conservation purposes. So that's kind of what we work on.
Okay.
And then, of course, there are great opportunities for folks to volunteer. We have one volunteer who's helped us with communications issues. Trying to remember his name. I think it's Pete.
No, never heard of him.
So
Never heard
anyway,
of
I
him.
really appreciate you being a volunteer and supporter of our organization.
Oh,
It
yeah.
takes a village to do lots of good stuff.
And okay, Eric, would you mind sticking around for another segment?
Sure.
All
yeah,
right, we'll be right
happy
back.
to.
What was?
We're gonna wrap to air after the next after this break,
Okay.
because I was originally planning from the 60.
Yep.
So
Okay.
there's been 2, and then we can do one last question. That'll be wrap.
Okay. Yeah, you're like 45 seconds. I'm like, what? You threw me off. Is
Yeah, but we can probably just do.
this going to be a half hour?
Yeah, it'll end up being. We're gonna cut it down.
Okay.
Where we can find you.
Yep.
Gotcha. Yeah, where we can find you. And I actually want to ask your question
Oh.
that you sent.
Yeah. Okay. 10. 5, 4, 3, 2, cue.
And welcome back to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. Sitting here with Eric Hammerling from the CFPA. Eric, welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I was wondering if you can maybe tell us where we can find you and how people can get more information on CFPA.
Sure. Well, the best way is to go to our website, which
Okay.
is ctwoodlands.org.
All right.
We also have a Facebook page and Instagram and all sorts of social media outlets. But our website's the best place to go. And someone sends me an email, I try to respond to every email I get. So I would encourage people to reach out.
Now, Eric, tell me this. What are some ways you can promote going to state parks with your family and friends?
Yeah, well, I would say, first of all, be aware of all of the amazing resources that are out there, and don't get stuck in just going to the same place all the time.
No.
It would be easy to do, to just choose something that's nearby, but I would encourage people to explore. There is a lot of information about the state parks on the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection website.
Right.
They have a map showing all the different parks. Each park has its own interesting story, like a park, like at Rocky Neck State Park, for example,
Right.
is one that CFPA's board back in the day
Right.
Actually put up money to protect and then donated it to the state to become a state park. And similar things were done at Gillette Castle and Peoples State Forest and other places like that. But each one has a very interesting story that helps to enrich the experience. And I'd say, the parks are very family friendly. So if people are looking for places to go, that's a great place to start.
Absolutely. Eric Hammerling from the Connecticut Forest and Park Association, thanks for your time, and we'll see you again soon.
Sounds great.
Thanks, Eric. On behalf of Eric Hammerling, I'm Pete Mezzetti. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.